Hi everyone, welcome back to Talks in Class. My name is Jenna and I'm so excited that you're joining me today for another episode of the pod and a really fun conversation, one that's been on my list for a long time. So I'm very excited about today's episode. I hope everybody's had a wonderful week. Nothing too new or exciting going on over here. Actually, it's been a pretty low-key week, which is always really nice, actually, especially when things are so busy like they tend to be in the summertime. My husband's actually in Connecticut. He's back east visiting family, so I'm solo this week, which has been so kind of weird to just be here hanging out with Daisy and I, but I gotta say I've been really productive with him gone. Not to say that he is in the way of my productivity typically, but I feel like when I'm home alone, I just have to find ways to keep myself busy because I'm bored if I am not doing anything. Like I can sit around and do nothing when I have company to do nothing, but now that I've been home alone the past few days, I just have to fill my time with something. And I also have to say that I have been talking to Daisy. If you're new here, Daisy is my dog. I've been talking to her more than usual. I mean, I talk to her a lot. I kind of treat her like a human, but I'm starting to get to the point where I'm having full-blown conversations and like acting as if she's going to talk back. So it's safe to say that working full-time from home and also being alone all the time, like living alone with just your dog might actually make you a little crazy. Other than slowly going crazy, having conversations with my dog, and being rather productive, if I do say so myself, I have been getting a lot of TV time in because I try not to subject my husband to too much of my nonsense that I like to watch on television, but I did stay up really late the other night watching One Tree Hill. I actually watched like 6 hours of One Tree Hill in one day, so I am sparing my husband that at least while he's away. As always, I'll start this episode with my what good happened. As you may know, we moved a couple weeks ago just into a new apartment within our same building. So we were able to unpack everything really quickly, but we didn't finish putting everything away and like hanging stuff on the walls and kind of, those little things that always end up getting left when you move and you don't do them for months after you move. This past weekend, after my husband left, he left kind of, I guess not that early, but he left kind of early for the airport and I was home alone. So I went on this rampage and just did all of that stuff. I hung up everything on the walls that needed to go up. I put all of the little things that needed to be packed away in storage away, all of those little things. And it felt so good. I took all the donation stuff out, just all of those little things. And that felt really, really nice. So exciting. Such a great feeling to have it actually done, because normally for me, there would be that one box of stuff that would sit in the corner for like 6 months. So lately, we've been talking a lot about high school in the 2000s, which is when I was in high school. But today I want to take it a little further back to the 90s. And I want to talk about one of my favorite memories from being a kid and a tween in the 90s, sleepovers. Before we get into it, I do quickly want to let you guys know that something new, a new service option, is coming to my clothing rental service, the Jenna Barclay Style Box, really, really soon. And I think this is something that people are going to be excited about. I know it's something that a lot of people have been asking about, and it will allow you to essentially just have even more variety and options available when you rent. So be looking out for that very soon. And with the start of summer, now's just a great time to try out the Style Box if you haven't tried it yet. Rental is such an easy and cost-effective way to just kind of mix up your wardrobe and play around with new styles without that commitment of buying, especially as we head into a new season, which is always nice. If you'd like to give it a try, your first month is always free. You don't need a code or anything for that free month. Just head to jennabarclaystylebox.com and click Get Started. So before we really get into this conversation about sleepovers in the 90s, I need to set the scene for you a little bit. It's 1998. I am 11 years old. Titanic, the Spice Girls, and the Backstreet Boys are my entire life. I just got braces and the little rubber bands on my braces are either pink and purple alternating or orange and yellow alternating. I don't know why I chose those colors, but I was very committed. I have round wire rim glasses that I've worn since about second grade. Bangs I'm trying to grow out, so I pin them to the sides of my forehead with those little snap barrettes from Claire's. My AOL screen name is Pez. Don't ask me why. Actually, I have no idea why that was my screen name. I've never been that crazy about Pez. I'm not even sure I've ever had Pez, to be honest. I never miss an episode of Bug Juice on the Disney Channel, and my entire little preteen world revolves around the one and only social activity that my friends and I really had, which were sleepovers. From probably about third or fourth grade onward, everything was a sleepover. Every occasion. We had sleepovers for birthday parties. We had sleepovers with just a couple of friends on like a random Saturday night when you were very lucky and your parents said yes. We had sleepovers for the last day of school, whatever. Any excuse we could find to have a sleepover, we took it and we had a sleepover. The birthday party sleepover though, that was the real deal. That was like the top tier category of sleepover, the highest level, if you will. This involved an entire swarm of little 11-year-old girls invading the home of the birthday girl. I mean, the parents probably really dreaded these things for weeks. Imagine having 10, 11-year-old girls in your house for like 12 hours. Just feral little preteen hormonal creatures. If it was a particularly important birthday party sleepover, we would even go to the mall and get those cute little invitations printed out on cardstock from like the card store. I remember one year, it was probably 1997 or 1998. I got those invitations printed out and I remember the font was like this funky, like Comic Sans adjacent type of font. And the border around the little cardstock invitation was all these little flowers and they were all lime green and bright blue. It was very 90s does 60s aesthetic, which was my entire aesthetic at the time. If an 11-year-old can have a personal aesthetic, that was it. And for these birthday party sleepovers, the whole friend group was invited. You didn't have to make any cuts. Everybody came over, and usually everyone slept over. The birthday party sleepover also involved more predetermined activities. It was a more scheduled event. Like maybe it was a movie night birthday party where we'd rent movies. Sometimes all of those movies fit a certain theme, like we'd have a horror movie night. And of course, we rented these movies at the video store in town on VHS tape because this was the 90s. Or maybe you were gonna do a makeover sleepover theme. We loved this. This was like a very common theme for our sleepovers. I am absolutely 100% positive that this entire obsession with makeover themed sleepovers was because of the movie Clueless and the scene where they give Ty the makeover. But for us being 11-year-old girls, all this really entailed is maybe curling someone's hair and putting a bunch of makeup on them, which we probably stole out of someone's mother's bathroom, and it was like her Mary Kay collection. And then we would dress them up in an outfit that looked like a Disney Channel movie star got lost on the way to her wardrobe fitting. And then maybe if we were really lucky and we could get our hands on someone's parents' film camera, we would do a little photo shoot with pictures of the finished look. I actually have some of these pictures from these makeover parties somewhere at my mom's house. I remember stumbling upon them not that long ago, but honestly, some of the looks were not half bad. I mean, considering that we were literal children, we didn't have that much to work with in terms of makeup and like skill. They were not that bad. Or if we weren't going to do the full makeover on one designated person, we could have kind of like a spa night sleepover and we would just beg our moms to buy us some of that bright green clay mask from Walmart. You guys know the ones. If you grew up in the 90s, you know this green clay mask. I think it was Freeman brand and it came in that squeeze tube and it was like lime green and we would slather that stuff all over our faces and then just let it harden until it started cracking and we couldn't move our faces while we painted our nails with some glittery blue bonbons nail polish that we also convinced our mom to let us buy while at Walmart, probably shopping for craft supplies for a school project or something. Or maybe it was an actual themed party, like the sleepover was a party that had a theme. I can't actually remember any themes that we had around this time, but I am sure that there was a Spice Girls party or two. I do remember having a Winnie the Pooh themed birthday party, but I think that was a little earlier than the sleepover craze, maybe third grade, so sometime around like 1995, maybe. But even if you didn't have a theme, a designated theme, you definitely had activities planned. There were things for us to do. The board games were stocked up, even though we really rarely ever played them, but we had Mall Madness, we had, Dream Phone, we had those. The stack of Tiger Beat and YM magazines full of quizzes and boy band stars to look at was ready. And because it was a birthday party, there was usually food available. There would be some sort of meal. Usually this was pizza. Actually, almost always it was pizza because, you can't expect the parents to cook for that many crazed tweens. They had enough to worry about just trying to hunker down and survive the night with all of these crazed children. And because I grew up in a really small town, pizza was really our only option for takeout or something that you didn't have to cook yourself. But the best part was that there was always a cake because it was a birthday party. So this could be any variety of cake. It could be a good old-fashioned homemade cake. It could be a box cake. It could be a cake from the grocery store. If you were really elite, it was a Dairy Queen ice cream cake or the cookie cake from the Mrs. Fields stand at the mall. Those really made us go wild, those cookie cakes. I remember one year for my birthday, this was early, this was early elementary school. I was obsessed with Looney Tunes and especially the Tasmanian Devil. I feel like we all went through a weird Taz phase in the 90s. But I had a cookie cake and it had Taz on it. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I can still picture it. I literally can still picture the icing Taz on my cookie cake. Anyway, the cake was a really exciting part of this party because, we would eat all this sugar and then get all hyped up after dinner and stay up all night long, which was always the goal at sleepovers. It was the number one goal at a sleepover. I don't know, did you guys do this too? We would basically compete to see who could stay up the longest, or essentially it was a competition to see who could be the last one to fall asleep at the sleepover. This would earn you really ultimate bragging rights if you could say that you were the last one asleep at the sleepover. So usually after dinner, we'd all go arrange our little sleeping bags in the family room or wherever it was that we were all going to camp out on the floor for the night, but we did not go to sleep. Oh, no, 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 no. This is when the fun started. There were plenty of activities, obviously, to check off the sleepover to-do list. And it's funny because we really were so entertained back then with such primitive technology. We had a single phone line, a TV that may or may not have even had cable, a couple of VHS tapes that we'd have to watch over and over and over and over again, rewinding them in between. Same with CDs. So basically, if you didn't have a CD that you weren't sick of yet from listening to it over and over, you just have to listen to the radio, on your little boom box in your room that probably looked like a shimmery blue spaceship. Do you remember those? They were kind of rounded and they had the CD player on top and the tape deck in the front. Oh man, I miss that thing. I want one of those things. Do they still make them? I'm gonna look on eBay. Maybe we had access to a computer to go on AOL, which was always super exciting because you could all try to crowd around the giant family computer while you would all take turns typing outlandish things in some AOL chat room where you told everyone that you were 19-year-old female from Florida when really you were a pack of 11-year-old girls in Wisconsin. I remember sending these elaborate emails to boys in our class at sleepovers. We'd all crowd around the computer. There's 10 of us and the computer screen is 15 inches maybe? So we're all crowded around the computer and we would all give our little input on what to write in these emails. And I have no clue what they actually said. Thank God. I don't want to remember. But I remember that this was a big group effort. And then once we actually composed the email itself, wrote out whatever horrific, cringy things that we were sending to these boys, we would spend another, hour formatting it and making it look the right way. The subject line was probably in the alternating upper and lower case, and then we had to change the font of the email, always Comic Sans in those days, always. And then we would make the background of the email something really obnoxious, bright neon blue, and then the text would be lime green, really assault their eyeballs. As soon as they open up, it's they log into AOL and it's "you got mail." They open it up and it's burns your retinas. We wanted it to be as bright as possible. So whatever genius things that we wrote in those emails really popped off the page. But usually the AOL time got cut short at sleepovers because we wanted to tie up the phone line doing something much more important, which was calling boys. I don't know if it was just my psycho little tween self or if this was a universal thing, but my friends and I were obsessed with calling boys at sleepovers. I mean, what could we possibly have had to say to them? I honestly have no idea. But I know that we used to try to ask them like sneaky questions, like who do you like or who's on your list? Was this a thing everywhere else or anywhere else? We called it our list, but essentially it was like a ranking of your current crushes. Plural always, because there were always multiple crushes in those days. Like you didn't just have a crush on one person. There was a list. So we would ask these boys, who's on your list? And they would give us, the top 5 girls that they liked or thought were hot. Imagine calling an 11-year-old hot. That makes me kind of uncomfortable thinking about it. But anyway, we would try to be slick and ask these questions when we would call the boys in our class at sleepovers. But first of all, my school was tiny. But second of all, preteen girls are not exactly the best at being quiet about things. So obviously everyone within a 5-mile radius of our little 6th grade classroom knew that we were all going to a sleepover that night. So these boys were not fooled. They outsmarted us. I don't know. They knew any girl that they might mention on these lists was probably in the room or maybe even on the phone listening from the landline phone in the kitchen, trying to be quiet, listening in on the call. So we really never got much out of the boys, unfortunately. But man, the adrenaline rush of calling a boy's house, I could start sweating thinking about it now. You would have to sit there and wait while it rang, just sweating, breathing heavy, trying to convince yourself not to hang up, praying his mother did not answer the phone, and then having to ask for him when inevitably his mom did in fact answer the phone because he never answered the phone, ever. Sometimes you'd get like a really typical Midwestern dad who would answer the phone, so he'd try to make like a joke. So you'd say, is Chris there? Like a terrified little field mouse. And then, Midwestern dad would laugh and be like, I've never heard of a Chris, or something like that. And he'd be laughing at his own joke and you'd be sitting there like panicking, like, please just put Chris on the phone, like you're about to hang up. But the whole process was such a rush. Kids today have no idea. All they have to do is take out their little iPhone and send someone a, I don't know, Snapchat message or however the kids today communicate. I actually have no idea. Do they just like tag each other in TikToks? Either way, I need kids today to have to speak to a parent or an older sibling. That was worse. The older sister. She was the worst. You did not want the older sister to answer the phone. But I need kids today to have to talk to a parent or an older sibling before they can get to communicate with the person that they're trying to like awkwardly flirt with. It's character building. Maybe this is why millennials are so terrified of talking on the phone. We're scarred from this experience from our youth. Oh my God, speaking of the phone, we really liked to call the radio station, my friends and I. Okay, so our local radio station, our local like top 40 station was called Z93. And there was this one DJ who worked the overnight. This poor woman, she was probably, looking back, she was probably like in her 20s, new DJ, has to work the crappy overnight shift. We would call this woman and, request songs to be dedicated to boys. And we would literally sit on the phone with her and tell her about our little, like, tween boy drama. And this wonderful, sweet woman would humor us and listen to us go on and on, I'm sure, about like who liked who and whose boyfriend broke up with them, probably via a past note in geometry. Oh my God. I actually cannot believe this. I am so embarrassed for my child self with this one. We really bothered this woman way more than we should have. She should have said, girls, go to bed. Oh my God, I'm horrified. Whew, I'm sweating. Other than the phone line though, we did have the primitive photo and video technology to keep us busy if we were very, very lucky. Maybe we could get our hands on that film camera to do a little photo shoot, or even better, the family camcorder. If you could get your hands on a camcorder, and I do say camcorder because It was a big ol', we had the one that like sat on your shoulder from the 80s, and you could put a whole full-size VHS tape in that bad boy. I mean, it weighed it weighed half as much as me. But if you could get your hands on a camcorder, that sleepover was about to turn into the set of a Spice Girls music video so fast. I recently found this videotape, VHS tape, from actually probably 1998. My friends and I are dressed up as the Spice Girls, and we're pretending to be in a Spice Girls behind the scenes type video. Like, it's us pretending to be the Spice Girls, giving interviews and like talking to each other as if we're just the Spice Girls hanging out and some camera crew is following us around like a reality TV show or something. And then there's like quick interviews, like confessional style. Bad British accents, costumes, all of it. Like, we were fully in character. And this video goes on and on. It's probably 2 hours of this footage. And if you were a tween in the Spice Girls era, you probably have a similar video floating around somewhere. You know what? You should actually find the friend who's most likely to have this video, either to watch it or destroy it, or both, honestly. It was wildly embarrassing to watch. I didn't watch all of it, obviously, but it was also quite entertaining. And it was cute to see how entertained we were by I mean, we were doing nothing, but we were doing nothing in character. So that was our activity, and that was very exciting to us. And we would entertain ourselves for hours with the camcorder. I mean, this was so fun for us. I also have a video of my friend and I making fake casting tapes for the pageant in Drop Dead Gorgeous, which we loved that movie. So that must have been a little later, probably 2000 or so middle school for us. But it's just the two of us in this video, and we would go back and forth dressing up as all of these different characters, all these different outfits. I mean, full character changes, hair changes, makeup changes, and we would give our little audition for why we wanted to be in the fictional pageant that we made up for this video that we made. Honestly, does it surprise anybody that I now make parody videos as my job? Because it should not. But naturally, we would eventually run out of steam, and girls one by one would start falling asleep, obviously. And then, once people started falling asleep, things started getting real. You could not, under any circumstances, fall asleep first. Because if you did, it was prank time. I only remember actually attempting this like once or twice, but the unofficial rule was always that whoever fell asleep first at the sleepover had pranks pulled on them. All the sleepover classic pranks, you know, putting their hand in a cup of warm water to try to get them to pee. Like, what was wrong with us? Who does that? Also, if you make your friend pee at your sleepover, she's gonna pee on your floor, genius. Like, what are you gonna do in the morning when you have to explain that to your mother? What are you gonna say? Or we'd put shaving cream on their hand and then tickle their nose and hope that they would like smack, you know, the shaving cream onto their face while they try to scratch their nose. Meanwhile, they have another hand that they could use. I don't know. It never worked. We did attempt the shaving cream thing, I think once only, and it didn't work. We were just left with this mess of shaving cream that we had to try to clean up, and the girl just slept through it. So we were like trying to clean shaving cream off this girl's hand while she was sleeping. It was dumb. It did not There was the freezing the underwear thing, which meant that you would dig their underwear out of their bag, which is, okay, weird already, and then dunk them in water and put them in the freezer, which was also dumb because, I mean, then what? After you get them wet and put them in the freezer, what happens? Your mom wakes up in the morning and finds a pair of frozen little girl's underwear in the freezer when she goes looking for the Eggos. Like, okay, and... That sounds like more of a prank on mom than the girl whose underwear it is. Poor mom who let, 10, 11-year-old girls sleep in her house. Stupid. So mostly this was just kind of an unspoken competition to try to be the last one to fall asleep. But eventually this kind of delirium would set in because, again, we're like 11 years old. We can hardly hold our eyes open through social studies, let alone until 4 o'clock in the morning. We would be so silly when we would get to those wee hours of the night. Like, we'd be giggling ferociously at absolutely nothing. We'd be taking the quizzes and magazines over and over to try to get different answers. We would be surfing random Backstreet Boys fan web pages that took 15 minutes to load online, like in the middle of the night. And it's funny because now as an adult, I would be the first one to sleep always. I will compete for that, actually. I will be in a competition to be the first one to fall asleep, and I will win every time, honestly. I love sleep. But the sleepovers were the best, even though your parents would pick you up the next day after approximately, 3 hours of sleep, and you'd feel like a walking zombie. You slept in a sleeping bag on someone's floor. But we lived for a good sleepover. It was all we had, honestly, as tweens. Because every good 90s sleepover needed some good 90s entertainment. I'm gonna wrap this up today by sharing my top 5 sleepover movies from the late 90s that my friends and I personally were obsessed with. And I do have to note that I set this whole sleepover episode specifically in 1998. So for the purpose of this list, I'm excluding anything that came out after that. And if you look up teen movies that came out in 99, all of the good ones, like so many great ones came out then. So it made it much easier to narrow this down to 5. Number 5 is Mallrats. I don't know what we were doing watching this movie. I actually need to revisit it because I remember knowing that it was wildly inappropriate. And I remember watching it when I was significantly older and thinking, what was I doing watching this when I was in elementary school? But we were obsessed with this movie. And I can't imagine that we understood anything that was going on in it, but there was something about it that we just found so hilarious, even though we didn't get any of the jokes. We watched it over and over and over throughout like late elementary school and middle school. Number 4 is The Craft. In general, we loved like scary type movies, especially at a sleepover. It's such a cliche, but it is for a reason. But The Craft, when that movie came out, first of all, I was, again, too young to watch it, but this is the 90s. When The Craft came out, it took my friends and I by storm. We thought we were little mini witches. We would try to do spells on each other at recess in elementary school, and I remember one day we had ourselves convinced that we had changed a girl's eye color on the playground at recess with our friends playing Foursquare like a couple feet away from us, and we're sitting like by the monkey bars doing witchcraft. We also did attempt light as a feather, stiff as a board a few times. It didn't go well. Number 3, still a movie that I love to this day, Romy and Michelle's High School Reunion. This movie is so funny and so underrated. I don't hear a lot of people talk about it, but my friends and I were really obsessed with it. Something about just like their characters and obviously their clothes, we totally loved. We loved the outlandish ending. We loved quoting it and telling people at school that we invented Post-its and watching them look confused and then giggle and run away. We were obsessed. But this movie holds up. It's still really funny. Number 2, naturally, Spice World. Spice World is probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I own it on VHS, which is great because it's not available to watch anywhere, which is actually tragic. But I did try to watch it when I was at my mom's recently because I still have a functioning VCR. Actually, it's a TV VCR combo in my room there. So I'm able to watch my VHS tapes when I go, and I tried to watch Spice World. I didn't even understand it. I was watching like, what is like, what's happening in this movie? But this movie, I mean, the Spice Girls were our entire lives when they were super popular in the late 90s. And when this movie came out and we all got it on VHS, I mean, I am shocked my VHS tape still works. Do you guys remember the Spice Girls lollipops that were like ice cream flavored? Like they were like strawberry and vanilla ice cream flavored. I remember you used to be able to buy them at Deb, the store Deb in our mall. For some reason, they were like by the checkout lane. So we would stock up on those before sleepovers so that 1, we could use them in our little Spice Girls video. Whoever was playing Baby always had to have a lollipop. But 2, so that when we watched Spice World, we could all eat our little Spice Girls lollipops and feel like we were part of the action as we watched this movie. Like we were so obsessed with it. It was a whole phenomenon. It was a lifestyle, really. And number 1, the top pick for any good sleepover, especially in the 90s, anything scary, but especially Scream. I remember seeing Scream for the first time on video. I didn't see it in theaters because I was far too young in 1996 to go see this in theaters, but I remember seeing it for the first time at a friend's birthday party sleepover. It was probably her 10th birthday, which is very young, but again, it was the 90s. I don't know. We were all in our sleeping bags on the floor in the like TV room of her house watching this movie. We had the lights off, and I remember us all trying to act like we weren't scared. I remember also being like really confused by Scream because we knew it was supposed to be a scary movie. We knew it was a horror movie, like a slasher, but then there's also kind of like the meta aspect of Scream where it's kind of parodying itself. And we obviously didn't understand that because we were children. But I remember thinking like, wow, this is kind of like an awesome teen movie, but it's also a horror movie. In general, we really loved renting scary movies for sleepovers, and we would drag our mothers to the video store, and we had one in town. And we would pick out the most random old horror movies. Like I remember renting Prom Night, like the old Prom Night for a sleepover one time, and our parents didn't question this. They just said, sure, you want to rent Prom Night, like a slasher about teenagers being brutally killed on the, sure, yeah, okay. And they would rent them for us, and we would just watch them alone, you know, at 10, 11, 12 years old. So we loved scary movies for sleepovers. They were always staples in the rotation. And I don't know, there was something about being afraid that was fun, you know, it was exciting. I'm not sure when we stopped having sleepovers. I was thinking about this when I was kind of outlining my thoughts for this episode. Probably sometime in middle school, there was this moment I think that we all kind of went through. For me, it was probably somewhere between 7th and 8th grade where we decided that we were like too old for things, and sleepovers as an activity kind of became one of those things. But they were so much fun. They were such a central part of my, I guess, social life, if you can call it that, as a tween in the 90s. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. This was a really fun conversation for me. I'll have to do more on the 90s because I do have some really funny memories. Although those are the cringiest memories because that age was a little rough. If you did enjoy this episode, please share it with a friend who might also enjoy it. I will be back next week. So until then, please rate, review, and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. I'll see you next week. Bye!